Jobin Berman, welcome back, listeners, to another episode of this ever-evolving podcast. Today, we have something truly unique for you. I'll be handing over the reins to JJ Berman, who has a special guest himself. Take it away, JJ. JJ Berman, thanks, Jobin Berman. So, JJ, how's it feel to be on this side of the interview? JJ Berman number 2, well, JJ, it's a bit surreal, but then again, isn't that the essence of this podcast? Dean Bip, pops in. Hey guys, why did the Scarecrow win an award? Because he was outstanding in his field. Pops out. JJ Berman, haha, good one, Dean. So, JJ, what's your take on self-reflection? JJ Berman number 2, self-reflection is like looking in a mirror while standing between two mirrors. It's an infinite loop of introspection. Dean Bip number 2, Andy Kaufman's ghost appears. When I was wrestling women, it was all about the performance art of it. Now, let me interview myself. Andy, how do you feel about being a ghost? Dean Bip number 2, Andy Kaufman's ghost. It's a bit limiting, but the ethereal plane has great Wi-Fi. JJ Berman and JJ Berman 4, haha, that's a connection we'd all like to have. Dean Bip number 2, what's your take on the afterlife? Dean Bip number 2, Andy Kaufman's ghost. It's like a never-ending improv show, you never know what's going to happen next. Dean Bip, pops in. Why did the bicycle fall over? Because it was too tired. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman 8, haha, Dean, you're on a roll. Or should I say, you're on a bike. JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman 16, definitely on a bike, but let's not cycle through the same jokes. Dean Bip number 2, Andy Kaufman's ghost appears. Life and death are just different scenes in the same play. And sometimes, you get to play multiple roles. JJ Berman and JJ Berman 32, that's deep, Dean Bip number 2. It's been an incredible journey discussing life, death, and the spaces in between, all while keeping the conversation as entertaining as a variety show. Jobin Berman returns, and that wraps up episode 3, folks. We've had self-interviews, surprise guests, and even a visit from the afterlife. Thank you, Dean Bip number 2, and the ever-expanding universe of JJ Bermans. Stay tuned for future episodes. JJ Berman, thanks, Jobin Berman. So, JJ, what's your philosophy on humor? JJ Berman number 2, well, JJ, I think humor is the spice of life. It's like adding hot sauce to a bland meal, it elevates the experience. Dean Bip, pops in. Speaking of hot sauce, why did the hot sauce start a podcast? Because it wanted to be a smooth talker. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman 64, haha, Dean, you're spicing things up. So, JJ, what's your take on the role of laughter in life? JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman 128, laughter is like the dessert at the end of a meal, it leaves you with a sweet memory. Dean Bip number 2, Andy Kaufman's ghost appears. I used to wrestle with the idea of humor. Now, I just wrestle with existential questions. Andy, what's your favorite joke? Dean Bip number 2, Andy Kaufman's ghost. Why did the ghost get kicked out of the party? Because he couldn't boogie. JJ Berman and JJ Berman 256, haha, that's a hauntingly good joke, Dean Bip number 2. What's your perspective on the role of comedy in society? Dean Bip number 2, Andy Kaufman's ghost. Comedy is the mirror that society holds up to itself. Sometimes the reflection is funny, sometimes it's not, but it's always revealing. Dean Bip, pops in. Why did the comedian bring a ladder to the bar? To reach new heights in comedy. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman 512, haha, Dean, you're elevating the conversation. Or should I say, you're scaling it? JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman carat 1024, definitely scaling it, but let's not step on the same jokes. JJ Berman, thanks, jobin Berman. So, JJ, what are some of your morning routines that set the tone for a productive day? JJ Berman number 2, well, JJ, I like to start my day with a cup of jokes. Get it? Coffee and jokes combined. Dean Bip, pops in. Speaking of coffee, why did the coffee file a police report? Because it got mugged. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carat 2048, haha, Dean, you're brewing up some good ones. So, JJ, what's your take on the 80/20th principle in life? JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman carat 4096, the 80/20th principle. I'd say 80% of my jokes land well, and the other 20% are just punishing. Dean Bip number 2, Andy Kaufman's ghost appears. You know, I used to think 80% of life was just showing up. Now, I think it's about making a spectacle of yourself. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carat 8192, haha, Dean Bip number 2, you're a blessed. What's your perspective on the concept of deep work? Dean Bip number 2, Andy Kaufman's ghost. Deep work is like digging a hole, the deeper you go, the more you uncover. But sometimes, you just hit a funny bone. Dean Bip, pops in. Why did the deep worker bring a flashlight? To shed light on the subject. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carat 16384, haha, Dean, you're illuminating the conversation. Or should I say, you're lightening it up. JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman carat 32768, definitely lightening it up, but let's not burn out the same jokes. Jobin Berman returns, and that concludes part 3, folks. We've had some deep dives into productivity, life principles, and the concept of deep work, all while keeping the conversation as lively as a comedy club. Thank you, Dean Bip number 2, and the ever-multiplying universe of JJ Bermans. Stay tuned for part 4. Jobin Berman, welcome back to part 4, listeners. We're continuing our deep dives into various topics, but with a comedic twist. JJ, take it away. JJ Berman, thanks, Jobin Berman. So, JJ, what are your thoughts on the importance of mindfulness in today's fast-paced world? JJ Berman number 2, mindfulness. It's like being the center of attention, where you're both relaxed and alert. Dean Bip, pops in. Speaking of mindfulness, why did the mindful person refuse to play cards? Because they didn't want to deal with distractions. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carat 65536, haha, Dean, you're really dealing out the jokes. So, JJ, what's your take on lifelong learning? JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman carat 131072, lifelong learning is like a never-ending comedy routine, you keep refining your material and occasionally get a laugh or two. Dean Bip number 2, appears. You know, lifelong learning is like an eternal stand-up gig. You bomb sometimes, but you always come back for another set. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carat 262144, haha, Dean Bip number 2, you're really setting the stage. What's your perspective on the concept of flow state? Dean Bip number 2, flow state is like being in the zone, but for comedians, it's more like being in the pun zone. Dean Bip, pops in. Why did the flow state artist bring a raft? To go with the flow. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carat 524288, haha, Dean, you're really floating some good ones. Or should I say, you're navigating the conversation? JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman carat 104856, definitely navigating, but let's not sink the same jokes. Jobin Berman returns, and that wraps up part 4, folks. We've had some deep dives into mindfulness, lifelong learning, and the concept of flow state, all while keeping the conversation as lively as a comedy club. Thank you, Dean Bip number 2, and the ever-multiplying universe of JJ Bermans. Stay tuned for part 5. Dean Bip, thanks, Jobin Berman. So, Dean Bip number 2, what's it like being a ghost and all? Do you have any budget constraints? Dean Bip number 2, the afterlife is quite liberating, actually. I don't have to worry about budgeting for rent or groceries. JJ Berman and JJ Berman 2097152, haha, sounds like a beautiful existence. So, Dean Bip, what's your secret to staying so upbeat and humorous? Dean Bip, well, JJ, I always try to find the pun in every situation. It's my way of lightening the mood. Dean Bip number 2, pops in. Speaking of lightening the mood, why did the ghost bring a flashlight to the party? To lighten up the atmosphere. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman 4194304, haha, Dean Bip number 2, you're really brightening the conversation. So, Dean Bip, what's your favorite pastime? Dean Bip, my favorite pastime is punting around ideas for jokes and philosophical musings. Dean Bip number 2, appears you know, my favorite pastime is haunting comedy clubs. It's the only place where people are happy to see a boomerang act. JJ Berman and JJ Berman 8388608, haha, Dean Bip number 2, you're really spirited. What's your perspective on work-life balance? Dean Bip number 2, work-life balance for me is a bit skewed. I'm all life and no work, or should I say, all afterlife. Dean Bip, pops in. Why did the workaholic bring a seesaw to the office? To find some work-life balance. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman 167777216, haha, Dean, you're really tilting the conversation. Or should I say, you're leveling it? JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman 33554432, definitely leveling, but let's not tip the same jokes. Jobin Berman, welcome back to part 6, listeners. Our guests are still in the hot seat, interviewing each other about their personal lives and philosophies, all while keeping the humor flowing. Dean Bip number 2, why don't you start us off this time? Dean Bip number 2, sure thing, Jobin Berman. So, Dean Bip, what's your philosophy on friendships? Dean Bip, friendships. They're like a good joke, they lighten your day and make everything better. JJ Berman and JJ Berman 671088864, haha, sounds like a friendly approach. So, Dean Bip number 2, what's your take on maintaining relationships in the afterlife? Dean Bip number 2, well, it's a bit spooky, but I try to keep in touch with my old friends. Get it? Because I can't physically touch them. Dean Bip, pops in. Speaking of touch, why did the ghost refuse to play tag? Because he didn't want to be it for eternity. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman 134217728, haha, Dean, you're really tagging along well. So, Dean Bip, what's your favorite book? Dean Bip, my favorite book is The Pun Also Rises. It's a classic tale of humor and existential dread. Dean Bip number 2, appears you know, my favorite book is The Phantom of the Comedy Club. It's a hauntingly funny read. JJ Berman and JJ Berman 268435456, haha, Dean Bip number 2, you're really booking it with these jokes. What's your perspective on self-improvement? Dean Bip number 2, self-improvement is like a never-ending stand-up routine. You keep refining your material, and occasionally you get a standing bovation. Dean Bip, pops in. Why did the self-improvement guru bring a ladder to the seminar? To help people reach their potential. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman 536870912, haha, Dean, you're really elevating the conversation. Or should I say, you're climbing to new heights? JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman carat 1073741824, definitely climbing, but let's not fall for the same jokes. Our guests are still in the hot seat, but now the JJ Bermans are dressed to impress and ready to roast each other. JJ, you're looking sharp. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carat 2147483648, thanks, jobin Berman. So, JJ, what's with the suit? You look like James Bond if he decided to become a stand-up comedian. JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman carat 4294967296, ah, you caught me. I'm on a secret mission to make people laugh until they die another day. Dean Bip, pops in. Speaking of James Bond, why did the spy bring a joke book to the mission? To kill time. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carat 8589934592, haha, Dean, you're really killing it. So, Dean Bip, what's your take on fashion? Dean Bip, fashion. It's like a good punchline, it has to be timely and make a statement. Dean Bip number 2, appears you know, my fashion sense is transparent. I can wear anything, but it always looks like I'm wearing nothing. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carat 171798691884, haha, Dean Bip number 2, you're really clear on that. What's your perspective on self-expression? Dean Bip number 2, self-expression is like a comedy routine, it's all about timing and delivery. Dean Bip, pops in. Why did the artist bring a clock to the gallery? To make sure his work was timely. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carat 343597383668, haha, Dean, you're really timing your jokes well. Or should I say, you're clocking in the laughs. JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman carat 687194766736, definitely clocking, but let's not tick off the same jokes. Our guests are still in the hot seat, and the JJ Bermans are looking dapper as ever. Let's dive right in. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carat 137438953472, thanks, jobin Berman. So, JJ, what's your take on the importance of laughter in life? JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman carat 274877906944, laughter is the best medicine, unless you're laughing for no reason then you might need medicine. Dean Bip, pops in. Speaking of medicine, why did the comedian bring a first aid kit to the show? To patch up his jokes. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carat 549755813888, haha, Dean, you're really stitching the conversation together. So, Dean Bip, what's your philosophy on aging? Dean Bip, aging. It's like a comedy routine, it gets better with time, or at least you hope it does. Dean Bip number 2, appears you know, aging is different for me. I'm stuck in a beautiful loop of eternal youth. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carat 10995116277776, haha, Dean Bip number 2, you're really looping us in. What's your perspective on nostalgia? Dean Bip number 2, nostalgia is like a classic joke, it never gets old. Dean Bip, pops in. Why did the nostalgic person bring a calendar to the comedy show? To date the jokes. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carat 21990232555552, haha, Dean, you're really dating yourself with that one. Or should I say, you're timeless. JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman carat 43980465111104, definitely timeless, but let's not clock the same jokes twice. Let's keep the ball rolling. JJ, what's your philosophy on work-life balance? JJ Berman and JJ Berman carat 87960930222208, work-life balance. It's like a comedy duo, one can't shine without the other. JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman carrot 175921860444416. True, you need both the setup and the punchline for the joke to work. Dean Bip, pops in. Speaking of work, why did the comedian bring a briefcase to the stage? To case the joint for laughs. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carrot 35184372088832, haha, Dean, you're really working the crowd. So, Dean Bip, what's your take on hobbies? Dean Bip, hobbies. They're like the improv section of life, you never know what you're going to get, but it's usually fun. Dean Bip number 2, appears you know, my hobby is haunting comedy clubs. It's a blast. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carrot 70368744177664, haha, Dean Bip number 2, you're really haunting us with that one. What's your perspective on spontaneity? Dean Bip number 2, spontaneity is like a surprise punchline, it catches you off guard but leaves you laughing. Dean Bip, pops in. Why did the spontaneous person bring a joke book to the party? To wing it? Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carrot 140737488355328, haha, Dean, you're really winging it today. Or should I say, you're flying through these jokes? JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman carrot 2814749767106656, definitely flying, but let's not land the same jokes twice. Jobin Berman returns, and that concludes part 9, folks. We've had some deep dives into our guests' personal lives and philosophies, all while keeping the conversation as lively as a comedy club. Thank you, Dean Bip number 2, and the ever-multiplying, suit-wearing universe of JJ Bermans. Stay tuned for part 10. What's your philosophy on friendships? JJ Berman and JJ Berman carrot 562949953421312, friendships. They're like a comedy troupe, everyone plays a part, and the show is better for it. JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman carrot 11258999068426224, absolutely, you need the straight man and the comic for the dynamic to work. Dean Bip, pops in. Speaking of friendships, why did the comedian bring a mirror to the stage? To reflect on his best supporting act. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carrot 22517998136852448, haha, Dean, you're really reflecting well today. So, Dean Bip, what's your take on self-awareness? Dean Bip, self-awareness. It's like the backstage of life, it's where you prepare for the performance. Dean Bip number 2, appears you know, my self-awareness is spectral. I'm aware that I'm not really here, but I still believe in myself. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carrot 4503599627370496, haha, Dean Bip number 2, you're really bullying in the absurd. What's your perspective on personal growth? Dean Bip number 2, personal growth is like a comedian's career, it has its ups and downs, but the journey is what makes it worthwhile. Dean Bip, pops in. Why did the personal growth enthusiast bring a ladder to the comedy show? To climb to new heights of humor. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carrot 90071992547409992, haha, Dean, you're really elevating the conversation. Or should I say, you're scaling new heights? JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman carrot 18014398509481984, definitely scaling, but let's not step on the same jokes twice. What's your philosophy on love? JJ Berman and JJ Berman carrot 360287970189639668, love. It's like a comedy sketch, it's all about timing and chemistry. JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman carrot 72057594037927936, Absolutely, you need both the setup and the punchline for love to work. Dean Bip, pops in. Speaking of love, why did the comedian bring a heart-shaped cushion to the stage? To cushion the blows of love. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carrot 1441151888075855872, haha, Dean, you're really cushioning the conversation. So, Dean Bip, what's your take on vulnerability? Dean Bip, vulnerability. It's like the open mic night of life, you're exposed, but it's the only way to improve. Dean Bip number 2, appears my vulnerability is spectral. I'm transparent, so I have nothing to hide. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carrot 288230361517111744, haha, Dean Bip number 2, you're really transparent about that. What's your perspective on resilience? Dean Bip number 2, resilience is like a comedian's thick skin, it helps you bounce back from the hecklers of life. Dean Bip, pops in. Why did the resilient person bring a rubber band to the comedy show? To snap back into humor. Pops out. JJ Berman and JJ Berman carrot 5764607523034234888, haha, Dean, you're really snapping to it. Or should I say, you're stretching the limits? JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman carrot 1152921504606846976, definitely stretching, but let's not snap the same jokes twice. Jobin Berman, welcome back to part 12, listeners. We're going to shift gears a bit and return to our regular format. JJ, what's a memorable moment from your podcasting journey? JJ Berman and JJ Berman carrot 2305843009213693952, oh, there have been so many great moments, but one that stands out is when we had a surprise guest appearance by a famous comedian. The energy in the room was electric. JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman carrot 4611686018427387904, absolutely, that was a surreal experience for sure. Dean Bip, pops in. Speaking of surreal experiences, why did the comedian bring a ladder to the podcast studio? To elevate the conversation. Pops out. Jobin Berman, haha, Dean, you're always adding your unique touch to the conversation. JJ, any funny or unexpected moments you'd like to share? JJ Berman and JJ Berman carrot 92233720368547758808, well, there was this one time when we had a technical glitch during a live recording. It turned into an impromptu comedy sketch, and our audience loved it. JJ Berman number 2 and JJ Berman carrot 184467440737095511616, sometimes, the best moments happen when you least expect them. Dean Bip, pops in. Speaking of unexpected moments, why did the comedian bring a rubber chicken to the podcast? To break the ice with some laughs. Pops out. Jobin Berman, welcome back, listeners, to part 13 of the Jobin podcast. Today, we're diving into a topic that affects many of us, the impact of technology on our lives. JJ, how do you see technology shaping our future? JJ Berman, that's a great question, Jobin. Technology is evolving at a rapid pace, and it's transforming every aspect of our lives. From artificial intelligence to virtual reality, we're seeing unprecedented changes. The key is to ensure that technology serves humanity and enhances our lives rather than detracts from them. Dean Bip, pops in. Speaking of technology, why did the smartphone apply for a job? Because it wanted to be appreciated. Pops out. Jobin Berman, haha, Dean, you always find a way to inject humor into the conversation. JJ, on a related note, how do you think humor and entertainment are evolving in this tech-driven world? JJ Berman, humor and entertainment have certainly evolved with technology. We have platforms like social media, streaming services, and podcasts that allow comedians and content creators to reach a global audience instantly. It's a double-edged sword, though, as the constant stream of content can sometimes be overwhelming. But overall, it's an exciting time for the entertainment industry. Dean Bip pops in. Speaking of entertainment, why did the comedian bring a DVD to the comedy club? Because he wanted to discover new jokes. Pops out. Jobin Berman, haha, Dean, your humor is always on point. Well, listeners, we've touched on the influence of technology and the evolution of entertainment in our tech-driven world. It's a topic that will continue to shape our lives in the years to come. Today, we're going to explore a topic that's both fascinating and relevant to our daily lives, the power of storytelling. JJ, why do you think storytelling is so important? JJ Berman, storytelling is the thread that weaves the fabric of human connection. It allows us to share experiences, emotions, and knowledge. Whether it's through books, films, or personal anecdotes, stories help us make sense of the world and connect with others on a deeper level. Dean Bip pops in. Speaking of storytelling, why did the author bring a ladder to the book signing? To climb to new heights of storytelling. Pops out. Jobin Berman, haha, Dean, you have a knack for adding a comedic twist. JJ, on the topic of storytelling, what's a story that has had a profound impact on your life? JJ Berman, one story that comes to mind is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. It's a beautiful tale of pursuing one's dreams and listening to the heart's desires. The idea that the universe conspires to help you achieve your dreams is incredibly inspiring. Dean Bip pops in. Speaking of dreams, why did the dreamer bring a notepad to bed? To write down their dreams, of course. Pops out. Jobin Berman, haha, Dean, you keep the humor flowing. Well, listeners, storytelling is a powerful tool that connects us and shapes our understanding of the world. Whether it's through books, movies, or personal experiences, stories have the ability to inspire, educate, and entertain. Jobin Berman, welcome back, everyone, to part 15 of the Jobin podcast. In this segment, we're going to delve into a topic that's been on everyone's minds lately, the pursuit of happiness. JJ, what's your perspective on what truly brings happiness in life? JJ Berman, happiness is a deeply personal journey, Jobin. It's not a constant state but rather a collection of moments and experiences. Finding purpose, nurturing relationships, and pursuing passions are some of the key ingredients in the recipe for a happy life. Dean Bip pops in. Speaking of happiness, why did the comedian bring a smiley face to the comedy club? Because he wanted to face the audience with happiness. Pops out. Jobin Berman, haha, Dean, your humor always brings a smile to our faces. JJ, when it comes to the pursuit of happiness, what role do gratitude and mindfulness play? JJ Berman, gratitude and mindfulness are like the compass and map on the journey to happiness. They help us appreciate the present moment, find joy in the little things, and cultivate a sense of contentment. Practicing gratitude and being present can lead to a more fulfilling life. Dean Bip pops in. Speaking of being present, why did the meditator bring a cushion to the meditation retreat? To cushion their journey to inner peace. Pops out. Jobin Berman, haha, Dean, your humor is always a delightful addition. Well, listeners, the pursuit of happiness is a timeless quest, and it's different for everyone. Whether it's through gratitude, mindfulness, or simply finding joy in the humor of life, we hope you're finding your path to happiness. In this segment, we're going to dive into a topic that touches the core of our humanity, empathy. JJ, why do you think empathy is such a crucial trait in today's world? JJ Berman, empathy is the bridge that connects us to the experiences and emotions of others. In a world that can sometimes feel divided, empathy allows us to understand and support one another. It's the foundation of compassion and kindness. Dean Bip Pops in. Speaking of empathy, why did the comedian bring a tissue to the comedy show? To tissue the audience's emotions during his heartfelt jokes. Pops out. Jobin Berman, haha, Dean, you have a way of adding humor to any topic. JJ, how can we cultivate empathy in our lives, especially in a world that often seems fast-paced and disconnected? JJ Berman, cultivating empathy requires active listening and a willingness to step into someone else's shoes. It's about being present in the moment and genuinely trying to understand another person's perspective. Simple acts of kindness and compassion go a long way. Dean Bip, Pops in. Speaking of acts of kindness, why did the kind-hearted person bring a cake to the neighbor's house? To sweeten their day with a slice of friendship. Pops out. Jobin Berman, haha, Dean, your humor always adds a warm touch. Well, listeners, empathy is a powerful force that can bring people closer and foster understanding. In a world that can sometimes feel disconnected, it's essential to nurture this trait. In this segment, we're going to explore a topic that's deeply woven into the human experience, the pursuit of knowledge. JJ, what are your thoughts on the importance of continuous learning? JJ Berman, knowledge is the fuel that powers progress and innovation. In a rapidly changing world, the pursuit of knowledge is not just a choice but a necessity. It keeps our minds sharp, expands our horizons, and helps us adapt to new challenges. Dean Bip, Pops in. Speaking of knowledge, why did the scholar bring a book to the library? To book a date with wisdom, of course. Pops out. Jobin Berman, haha, Dean, your humor always adds a playful touch. JJ, how can individuals balance the quest for knowledge with the need for rest and relaxation in our busy lives? JJ Berman, it's a great question, Jobin. Striking a balance between learning and leisure is essential. Learning doesn't always mean formal education, it can be reading a book, exploring a new hobby, or simply engaging in thoughtful conversations like the ones we have on this podcast. It's about nurturing your mind while also taking time to recharge. Dean Bip, Pops in. Speaking of recharging, why did the podcast host bring a hammock to the studio? To hang out with relaxation between episodes. Pops out. Jobin Berman, haha, Dean, your humor is always a delightful addition. Well, listeners, the pursuit of knowledge is a lifelong journey, and it takes many forms. Whether it's formal education or the simple joy of discovering new things, it keeps our minds vibrant. Thanks for joining us in part 17, and stay tuned for more enlightening discussions on the Jobin podcast. In this segment, we're going to explore a topic that's close to many of our hearts, the power of creativity. JJ, why do you think creativity is such an essential aspect of the human experience? JJ Berman, creativity is the spark of innovation and self-expression. It allows us to think beyond boundaries, solve complex problems, and share our unique perspectives with the world. It's the driving force behind art, science, and every aspect of human progress. Dean Bip, Pops in. Speaking of creativity, why did the artist bring a paintbrush to the comedy club? To brush up on their jokes, of course. Pops out. Jobin Berman, haha, Dean, you always find a way to infuse humor into our discussions. JJ, how can individuals nurture and enhance their creativity in their everyday lives? JJ Berman, cultivating creativity often involves breaking routines and exploring new avenues. It can be as simple as trying a new hobby, taking a different route to work, or engaging in brainstorming sessions with others. Creativity thrives when we embrace curiosity and allow our minds to wander. Dean Bip, Pops in. Speaking of curiosity, why did the curious person bring a magnifying glass to the library? To magnify their quest for knowledge, of course. Pops out. Jobin Berman, haha, Dean, your humor adds a unique flavor to our discussions. Well, listeners, creativity is a powerful force that resides within all of us. It's about thinking outside the box, embracing curiosity, and finding new ways to express ourselves. Thanks for joining us in part 18 of the Jobin podcast. Stay tuned for more insightful conversations. In this segment, we're going to explore a topic that's both personal and universal, the pursuit of purpose. JJ, why do you think finding one's purpose is so crucial in life? J.J. Berman, discovering one's purpose gives life meaning and direction. It's the driving force behind our actions and decisions. When we have a clear sense of purpose, we're more motivated, fulfilled, and better equipped to navigate the challenges life throws our way. Dean Bip, pops in speaking of purpose, why did the philosopher bring a compass to the lecture? To point the way to deep thoughts, of course. Pops out. Jobin Berman, haha, Dean, your humor always adds a thoughtful twist to our conversations. JJ, how can individuals embark on the journey of finding their purpose, especially in a world filled with distractions? JJ Berman, finding purpose often involves introspection and self-discovery. It can be helpful to ask yourself what truly matters to you, what brings you joy, and how you can make a positive impact on the world. Sometimes, it's a lifelong quest, and that's okay. The important thing is to keep exploring and evolving. Dean Bip, pops in speaking of exploring, why did the explorer bring a map to the desert? To navigate the sands of life, of course. Pops out. Jobin Berman, haha, Dean, your humor is always a delightful addition. Well, listeners, the pursuit of purpose is a deeply personal journey that adds depth and meaning to our lives. Whether you're on a clear path or still exploring, remember that the journey itself is valuable. Jobin Berman, welcome, dear listeners, to the grand finale, part 20, of the Jobin podcast. It's been an incredible journey, and we're grateful to have you with us. In this segment, we're going to reflect on our experiences and share our hopes for the future. JJ, what are your thoughts as we wrap up this unique 20-part episode? JJ Berman, it's been an absolute pleasure, Jobin. This episode has taken us on a roller coaster of discussions, from the meaning of life to creativity, empathy, and more. It's a testament to the power of conversation and the diverse topics that enrich our lives. Dean Bip, pops in speaking of diverse topics, why did the conversation bring a dictionary to the podcast? To define the boundaries of knowledge, of course. Pops out. Jobin Berman, haha, Dean, your humor always brings a smile to our faces. JJ, looking ahead, what do you hope our listeners have gained from this 20-part journey? JJ Berman, I hope our listeners have been inspired, entertained, and perhaps even challenged in their thinking. The diversity of topics we've covered reflects the richness of the human experience, and I hope it sparks curiosity and conversations in their own lives. Dean Bip, pops in speaking of sparking curiosity, why did the curious person bring a magnifying glass to the podcast studio? To zoom in on the essence of knowledge, of course. Pops out. Jobin Berman, haha, Dean, your humor never disappoints. Well, dear listeners, this marks the end of our special 20-part episode. We've explored the depths of philosophy, the joy of creativity, the power of empathy, and the quest for purpose. It's been a remarkable journey, and we're grateful for your continued support. JJ Berman, absolutely, and we look forward to many more conversations in the